Yo guys, I wanted to make a quick video going over the Striker, my current main in Lost Ark. I know it isn't considered one of the best classes in the game, but it sure is a lot of fun to play, so I recommend anyone looking to have a bursty, mobile, and awesome looking melee class to try out the Striker. But when looking to gear the Striker, you may ask yourself, how do I acquire everything I need to make the class succeed? Well, in this video, I'm going to go over the builds, as well as the locations of items you can get your needed gems, runes, etc, etc. So let's get right into it. First up, we can go ahead and talk about the build you want to run. There are two options, Deathblow and Esoteric Flurry, where Deathblow is slower, harder to play, but hits a lot harder in short bursts, or Esoteric Flurry, which is faster, more fluid, and allows you to do damage in combos, but takes a bit longer to get your abilities off. The general consensus is that Esoteric Flurry is great from tier 1 to early tier 3, but at the end game raid tiers, Deathblow is better due to it being able to dish out its damage quicker, giving the Striker time to react to the mechanics a lot easier. Whichever build you choose to play, you will have a lot of fun with this class, believe me. It is also worth noting that Esoteric Flurry was recently buffed, so not a whole lot of information on its viability is out there right now. If you really want, I'm sure you could run it for the top of tier 3 endgame. Now that you understand the general idea of the class engravings for the Striker, now it is time to go over the stat priority. Because Deathblow requires a ton of meter building, you want to stack specialization with a little bit of crit. Roughly 75% specialization with 25% crit. The easiest way to accomplish this is to get a neck with spec and crit, and the amount of crit on your neck should suffice. Then stack spec on the rest of your gear. On the other side of things, Esoteric Flurry wants to stack swiftness with crit and spec as off stats to focus on. With this engraving, you want around 50% swiftness with 25% crit and 25% spec. The reason you still want spec is that you can eventually use force spender abilities in the build at tier 3 content if you have spec and a lot of swiftness. With the swiftness stacking, however, this spec plays a lot faster than Deathblow, and the specialization stat helps round out your build. Now we can talk about the actual skill point allocation for each build, where I go over an early game pre-tier 3 build with low secondary stats and an end game build to shoot for each engraving, along with different builds to use in single target and AoE encounters. First up, Deathblow's early game build focusing on single target with low specialization, meaning low meter building, will use this build. The reason for using Triple Fist over the Violent Tiger skill is that the Triple Fist is on a low CD and also builds a strong amount of meter early game, even if it doesn't do that much damage. Whereas with Violent Tiger, the damage is better, but the meter you get isn't enough. As you get better gear and more skill points, switch your points out of Triple Fist and into Violent Tiger, like is shown in this late game build. Next up, we can talk about Esoteric Flow, and I will do the same thing where I give an early game build and a late game build. The same sentiment applies with this build as with Deathblow. You will take Triple Fist early until you can achieve higher amounts of swiftness with cooldown reduction and some specialization. Also, an important thing to note is that you will use more spender skills in the late game build with the Esoteric Flurry, where at the start you will only have 3 spenders and later take 4 by replacing Violent Tiger. Like I mentioned earlier, this build plays a lot faster with a lot more meter building and spending, which is why I like this build a lot. Now onto the AoE builds, starting with Deathblow. For the early game, you'll want to run a lot of meter building abilities with only a couple spenders, where the spenders you choose can change based on what you want. With this build, you can replace Blast Formation with Lightning Tiger Strike, as typically the mobs die extremely quickly, so you won't have time to cast Blast Formation. Lightning Tiger Strike goes off quicker and has higher burst, so personally I like to use that for tons of quick AoE after my tornado. For Esoteric Flurry, you will want to run with a similar build, although you can run with 3 spender abilities, rather than 2 if you have a high enough swiftness and specialization. Early game, however, this build will run smoother with the Deathblow build I showed before. With high stats, however, you can run the build shown here, replacing Blast Formation with Tiger Emerges if you want. Next, we can talk about engravings, which change depending on the build and tier of endgame. In general, you'll want to get your class engraving of choice and Master of Ambush, which increases back attack damage. This is the same for both builds, as your class engraving plus back attacks are what give you a ton of damage. In the early game, the next engravings you'll want to look for are Spirit Absorption, attack speed will speed up your combos, and Adrenaline, as the bonus attack power and crit are always welcome. Another important thing to note is that the Storm Dragon Awakening can trigger Adrenaline to stack 3 times. This means that you can achieve your max stats for that 5% crit basically for free. For the late game, I would prioritize Cursed Doll and Grudge, as they give the most beneficial bonus at the cost of making you heal for 25% less and take 20% more damage respectively. However, while doing tier 1 to the beginning of tier 3, do not go for these engravings. You will be changing out gear too much to attain level 3 in these engravings to make them worth the effort. Next, we can talk about runes and where to get some of them while going through the tier 1 and tier 3 content. The runes you'll want to go for Deathblow are 3 to 4 Wealth runes, 1 Rage rune, 2 Galewind runes, and 1 Overwhelm rune for the abilities shown here. For Esoteric Flurry, you'll want 4 Wealth runes, 1 Rage rune, 2 Galewind runes, and 1 Overwhelm rune. If you run with 4 Spender abilities at the late game, you can replace 1 Wealth rune on Sweeping Kick with an Overwhelm or Galewind rune for your Call of the Wind ability. Quick note, you run the Rage rune, which gives a chance for an attack speed and movement speed buff for Storm Dragon Awakening, as it has a chance to proc the effect 3 times during its cast, just like with the Adrenaline engraving. For the AoE build, the runes are the same for the basic builder abilities as the single target build. However, Berserk Circle, Swift Wind Kick, and Blast Formation all use the Galewind rune, because they have cast or wind up animations that are sped up by Galewind. The awakening skill you can use is True Heavenly Awakening, as it has a further range than the other awakening skill. Now let's talk about where you can get some of these runes in the endgame before hitting tier 3. A lot of the runes can actually be obtained via the daily islands that spawned around the map. On the top left of your screen, you will see a blue tab, and by clicking on it, you will open up the timers for all the outgoing events throughout the day. Some of the events to look out for while gearing at level 50 are the Twisting Legion events that will occur on different continents depending on the item level of the event. This event drops the Rage rune that you can apply to your Storm Dragon Awakening for an attack speed buff. The Wealth rune can drop from the Lagoon Island and Tuki Island, where you can get a purple and blue Wealth rune from each island respectively. Here's a list of the options you have for the Wealth rune. The Galewind rune you can get from doing the Guardian raids, the Bleed rune drops from world bosses, and the Overwhelm rune drops from various activities that I will show here. Now let's talk about gems, which drop from Chaos Dungeons, Boss Rush, and World Bosses. Once you get the gems, you'll want to prioritize your damage gems on all your hard hitting abilities, aka your esoteric skills. You should try to get the damage on the Lightning Tiger Strike and Tiger Emerges, as well as Blast Formation if you're running that. Then try to get a lot of cooldown reduction for quite literally all of your 8 abilities. Why, you might ask? Well, strikers heavily depend on reducing their cooldowns regardless of build, because if you have quicker cooldowns, you can build a meter quicker and thus do massive damage on your esoteric skills. For the cards to build, the best card set will be the Light of Salvation card bundle, fully upgraded. But this is something you should not worry about right now. This is really expensive and not possible to obtain in our current state. Instead, I would work towards the budget set, that is the Lost Wind Cliff set, as it can give you a 7% crit buff and is reasonable to obtain, given that you're lucky. You can get the cards from packs if you're lucky, or in the Abyssal Dungeons, although some of them you can attain from reputations and other collectibles. Now, if you look at the card pack in your card catalog, you will see 12 Peace Awakening to get your bonus. Well, that simply means that you need a total of 12 upgrades across your entire deck. So for this deck, depending on your luck, you can upgrade your choice of legendary cards only once. Then upgrade the blue and green cards 5 times each, which totals 12 total upgrades, which will give you the quote-unquote 12 Peace Awakening. To upgrade the cards, you need to farm card XP and get lucky with duplicate cards. This is a grind, but worth it. Now let's go over the rotations that you can use. For Deathblow Strikers, you'll want to basically use your builder abilities to build meter so you can do a burst combo. Your burst combo is simple. You generate 4 orbs, use Lightning Whisper, Sweeping Kick, and then Lightning Tiger Strike or Tiger Emerges, with priority on your esoteric skills if you can only choose one skill to use. Late game, you will have enough spec to do the combo as Lightning Whisper, Lightning Tiger Strike, Sweeping Kick, and then Tiger Emerges. For Esoteric Strikers, you have a bit more freedom where you build meter with your skills. Then with full orbs, you do Lightning Whisper, Lightning Tiger Strike, Tiger Emerges, Blast Formation into Wind God if you have it. Basically, you use all of your hard hitters in your debuff window. Whew! Alright, that was a lot, but hopefully all this information will help you with quite literally all aspects of playing a striker. If you enjoyed this guide, please remember to leave a like, subscribe, and comment as it will help me out a lot. That being said, that will be it for me today, guys, and thank you so much for watching.